Hey everyone, welcome to the Memento Futurum podcast. Today we are chatting with Rae Lawrence. I'm going to share a little bit about Rae before we get into everything. She says, "My name is Rae, and I am a song carrier, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and teacher based in Northern California. I am passionate about the journey of awakening and wrote the song Wolf Woman as a support to the awakening of the wild feminine. I offer one-on-one coaching sessions for budding artists to tap into their authentic voice and free their art. I graduated from the University of Southern California with my master's degree in teaching and also teach children's music lessons where we develop rhythm skills, learn foundational music theory, and nurture the art of play." Welcome, Rae. Rachel, which one do you prefer?
Yeah, Rae is my artist name. As a teacher, I go by teacher Rachel. It's
Cute.
professional, yeah.
Awesome. I'm so thankful that you're here and that we're chatting. And, every time I have someone on, the calling to invite somebody here it is really a calling. It's like I'll end up seeing them in a dream or just like somehow it's like I'll be driving and like their name starts to pop up. And I want to say, um, maybe like a couple of months ago, I heard, oh, Rachel, but in closer to Leo season. And I was like, that's really specific. Okay, so we'll get closer to Leo season because you're a Leo. And like I remembered that. And it's always really fun for me to talk with people either in their season or closer to their season and just like all of the things. Like the astrology, I think really shapes the conversation and just like is part of the magic of what we're doing here. So just kind of putting that nugget there. And Rae is a dear friend. Girl, how long has it been? I'm like,
Yeah, we're going on almost 3 decades, so
that's
of knowing
wild.
each other. Yeah, since fourth grade.
Wow, that is so wild. And yeah, a lot of different like weavings in and out of time, where we've been closer and then, different doing different pockets of things. And I want to say our timeline with music together was like 2011, 2012, where I know you were exploring more coffee house music, and I was invited to work with you, and that was a fun situation to explore. And
Yeah, at the time you were really just stepping on to sound healing path.
mhm,
And you were playing a lot of piano and playing a lot of violin
mhm,
and really learning what it means to be like this carrier as a sound healer and a sound weaver. So it's
mhm.
been really beautiful and inspiring to see your journey unfold too as a weaver.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, it's incredible just to have, to be able to chat with someone that's like woven within the tapestry of like the history, like we meet different people at different times. And yeah, you were there for those really early beginnings and getting to play with you at Samba Latte, which I almost went to today, the coffee shop here in Vegas, but they were closed. And I was like, this is really funny. Just noting the I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think about you and the place, but like noting it here as a funny synchronicity of just like, oh yeah, like that happened and that was a really fun time. Um, but anyhow, so first I wanted to kind of just like drop in. So like you have these really cool core pieces that I was just I'm very inspired by, which is like you as an artist, like your voice is amazing, your music's amazing. You as a teacher for students, a music teacher. But I feel like you're teaching other things too. And then you as a coach. So like and I know that there's other pieces too, but I'm just like keying in on those. Um, and I was
Yeah,
going to ask,
absolutely.
yeah, I was going to
I
ask
forget
you,
that we're on this podcast. I'm nodding over our
yeah,
Zoom session right now, and I'm forgetting to like respond and be like, yes, yes, yes.
no, it's all
Um,
good.
yeah, I think as, women, we wear many hats. And Wolf Woman was really inspired by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, The Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Hmm.
I read I've read many of her books, and she has these really wonderful interpretations of the creative life for artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I really resonated with the idea of the wolf woman.
Mm,
And so, really, when we write songs as song carriers, sometimes it takes many seasons for a song to be birthed.
mm-hmm.
And then sometimes they come through really quickly. And Wolf Woman wrote itself in maybe 10 minutes. And it
Wow.
just came through so quickly. And it's been a really beautiful journey to have the song work on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we really write a song that is a soul song, like a soul medicine song, the song works on you over time.
Yeah.
And it heals us as, medicine music carriers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Wolf Woman is um out, but then also coming out, correct? Like we're in a process with this song. Well, I mean, clearly it's working
Yeah.
on you,
So
as you
Wolf
just said,
Woman
but
is on Spotify, it's on Apple iTunes, on YouTube. It's in many different places. It was recorded at Storytellers Studios in Petaluma. And Mary Isis, who is an incredible song carrier, she sang harmonies for me. And
awesome.
so it's a long song compared to what the culture is used to as far as, I say fast fashion, fast music.
That's a good point.
So yeah, so it's about almost 6 minutes, but I think it's
Mm-hmm.
worth the journey.
Clarissa is like a favorite, first of all. So thank you for mentioning Clarissa Pinkola Estes, like here. Um, and Women Who Run with Wolves. And she has like so many other amazing, pieces of work. And I know I usually audiobook everything with her, but like so I can hear her say the things. And I was just gonna mention the Creative Fire because it's like a really amazing piece by her. But Wolf Woman, like, so I know the story of the Wolf Woman, but like for you, I mean, I'm always really curious to know more. So, like, when a song comes in or a piece of art comes in, I was just talking with my husband Matt about this earlier. It's like we get to see the piece of art on the witness end, but it's like, wait, what was going on with the person? And it's like as an artist, I know there's all this goo that's going on. It's like my personal process and my dreams, and there's like all these little nuggets. But for you, I guess when you were bringing in Wolf Woman, maybe channeling it, like I don't know what word is really appropriate, but what was going on in your life? I guess what were you inspired by? Maybe you were reading the book. Like, I'm just curious to know more about what's behind the song, if you are willing to share.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have gone through many different phases of like the dark night of the soul on my
Mm-hmm.
path and on my journey. And when I first really woke up to the wild woman that lives within me.
Mm-hmm.
Emma was about 2, and I was running a home preschool at the time. And I
Wow.
had this amazing Waldorf mother who handed me The Women Who Run with the Wolves. And I was really just exploring what it meant to go from maidenhood to motherhood
Mm-hmm.
and what that truly meant. And Wolf Woman came through for me really strongly during that time, I think, as a support for my transition from maidenhood to motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed that this song, when I sing it live and everybody's howling, men are howling, women are howling, it's like the masculine and the feminine are both able to dance with this idea that the wild woman really deserves to express herself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she's needed. And like Clarissa talks about in many of her audiobooks,
Mm-hmm.
about the necessity of the wild woman, of the crone, of like the Magdalene energy in our culture that
Mm-hmm.
so often gets suppressed. And to have an outlet to express that energy,
Right.
I didn't know at the time that was something that was weaving itself through me.
Mm.
But that is how Wolf Woman currently has embodied itself throughout the world. It's given so many women in circles that I sit in, whether it's a cacao ceremony, um, or just singing it live.
Mm-hmm.
So many women have come to me and said, this has given me permission to be myself. Like there's a part of me that feels like I can be myself and I feel safe to be myself.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and so Wolf Woman, um, yeah, it almost feels like it wants to be played. So maybe at some time during this podcast session, I can play it live for you. But
Yeah, please.
um, it's definitely a journey. That song is a journey in and of itself.
Yeah. Do you want to do it now or do you want to wait till the end? I mean, it's up to you.
Sure, let's
Let's
go
do
for
it.
it.
Yeah. It's always a treat.
Oh, wolf woman, speak to me beyond the trees. You sleep in a timeless space. Oh, wolf woman, won't you howl with the moon? This life is calling you back home. I owl with the moon. I trust in her pulling of the tides. I owl with the moon. I trust in her love that still resides. Oh, gypsy woman, wandering soul amongst the stars, you call to me, be wild child, be free. Oh, gypsy woman, I will gather round your dancing fire, a song forever woven in your knowing. I owl with the moon. I trust in her pulling of the tides. I owl with the moon. I trust in her love that still resides. Oh, wolf woman wandering through the wild wilderness, she comes back whole again. She comes back free, carrying gifts of love and chains broken to all who gather around her. She comes back warm, protected, a sheltering tree. I owl, I owl, I howl with the moon, she's by my side. I owl, I howl, I howl, I howl, I howl for the love within, the love that never dies. woman, wandering soul amongst the stars. You called me, be wild child, be free.
Wow. Wow and wow. Thank you for sharing. And uh, it's such a transmission of the archetype. I could so feel it. And um, it's just so interesting because it's like you were talking about maiden to mother and the timing of the song. And there's just something incredible that happens walking that journey in motherhood, and the level of power, personal power, um, I would say truth, and just really like crystalline clear direction that tends to happen. So at some point, in the process. Um,
Absolutely.
and I'm saying that like, I know I'm saying that from my perspective, as a mother in this embodiment as Vanessa. So, maybe it's a projection, but, just sensing like how, I don't know. I'm like, how do I want to put to words what I'm actually feeling? It's like just the knowing of like, this is where I need to be and this is who I am and this is what I need to do, because what happens when you're a mom is like constant regulation, right? Like nervous system regulation and co-regulation with this baby,
Yeah.
and they're dependent on you. And the teacher, that mirror of the child, is just like makes you look at yourself, and face yourself. And it's just like, I don't know, like constant like rising and rising and rising and expansion. And it's just like, ugh. If there are shadowy corners, they're gonna get looked at. That's how I experienced your wolf woman today. I've heard it before, which I was so impressed with it too, before, but like, whoa, it's this, it feels like an anthem for that time.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about, yeah, just the rising of the mother and how our children, as these really strong, energetic light beings coming through us, call us into a rising.
Mm-hmm.
And really, what it calls us into is our protector energy.
Yeah.
It calls us into our mothering energy in a sense of I have something very sacred that I need to protect.
Mm-hmm.
And wolf woman is that for the wild woman, for the wild feminine. It's permission for all women, to be free, to reclaim their wild woman essence, their freedom,
Yeah.
you know. And yeah, I think we have this idea that we have to do it perfectly in motherhood, and we have to clear all the shadows and do
Mm-hmm.
everything right in order for this tiny being to thrive. But Vanessa and I grew up in Las Vegas, and we were
Mm-hmm.
talking earlier, we were laughing about the density of the city and how much shadow is there and how much temptation there is, to go into the material realms or just to identify in life
Mm-hmm.
with something external rather than internal.
Yeah.
And I always tell people if I can do it, if
Mm-hmm.
Vanessa and I can do it, if we can rise, through such a spiritually and the city has a lot of really profound desert ET. There is a lot of really beautiful growth happening. So for the star seeds and light beings in Vegas who are like,
Yeah.
hey,
I know.
I'm
Hmm.
here, I want to address you guys and be like, thank you for doing the deep work that's needed. And
Hmm.
we see you, and there's a lot of density. And so if we can clear that, going through everything we went through and we're still whole and embodied and complete, and
Hmm.
then I think, there's a point at our journeys where we have to say it's good enough. My mothering
Absolutely.
is good enough.
It's good enough. That is, hold on. We need this in print. Rachel said it. It's good enough. You know, that's the thing. It's in motherhood, in the path of the artist, musician, all the creative work. At a certain point, you have to just look at it and be like, I'm doing my best with what I have, with the cards I was given. And for the record, I don't think every single person, first of all, that lives here in Vegas that's on some kind of consciousness path, I think would agree with what you said, because a lot of people go, hey, this is really challenging out here because of just the way that the city is. And, it's just like the process of coming in, together and staying in one's wholeness, remembering like this is my truth. This is what is my truth and all of those kinds of things. Um but yeah, certain places are more dense on the planet and more dense. Did I say denser? That was weird. On the planet and they teach us, you know. I feel like living in Las Vegas has taught me how to not exile shadow,
Mm,
you know.
mm,
Very much a Black Moon Lilith teaching here for me as far as archetypes go. It's
mm.
not polarizing, not exiling, but rather like how do we love? This may not be my preferred or that might not be what's favorable to me, but like how do I love what is?
Oh, so profound.
Over and over and over. And just I was sharing, with Rachel before, like it's challenging to live here sometimes, and it's hot, and it's hot. Last week was like this whole heat
Yes. Yeah.
wave, and then that's mirrored in like that pressure cooker kind of like heat wave energy,
Mm.
energetically. And there's respite, there's relief. It's not like it's always bad, but there's moments of time. And but this is happening in people's lives everywhere. So I think it's really relatable what we're
Mm.
sharing,
Yeah.
the path of the mother. And I'm thinking too, like how for women who don't choose the path of motherhood, how these initiations and the energetics meet them just in different ways. I just think like, you know, the maturation process, it's still
Yeah.
there. Um, on my path, my teacher is my child.
Yeah. I
And
think there's a lot of, and this could be a completely separate podcast in and of itself. But as a teacher,
mhm,
um, yeah, and I teach 30 homeschool students currently and coach families in their homeschooling journey in all sorts of different styles, Reggio Emilia, Waldorf, nature-based unschooling.
wow.
Um, and, I think motherhood is a huge initiation because you are caring for a being outside of yourself. But it's not to say that somebody who didn't choose a path of motherhood isn't still a mother.
Mhm,
Mary, who recorded on Wolf Woman, she is a mother for our entire community in
mhm,
so many different ways. And she chose, not to have children in this lifetime.
yeah.
And I think that when you have an awareness as a young woman growing up to be on an awakened path and you choose not to mother a being, but you mother a community instead,
Mhm,
that's a really profound, deep soul path. And
absolutely.
I don't think that should ever be discredited. And I
Mhm,
think a lot of mothers or women who never had children, there is the shadow and this feeling of, I never got to mother. And so I don't have that embodiment or that
mhm,
next level knowing or wisdom, right?
right.
And I think it's really important to say that all shame from that should be completely dismantled, because so many women then are mothers for their friends, they're mothers for their communities, they're mothers in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an initiation that I will never have, having to spend
Mm-hmm.
really big portion of my life and energy caring for this one being, right?
Right.
So
Right. I know it's really dynamic and interesting to me. And I love that's why I was like, I wanted to begin the podcast just kind of lining out like you have these different facets that you're really working with. And when you say um, you're teaching, are you teaching music to homeschooling students, or are you teaching all subjects, or
yeah, so I am our like arts liaison for the charter school that I work for.
nice?
And I teach 4 music classes a week to kindergarten through 6th grade students. We're in person. And I also spearhead our plays, our entire play department. So I
Wow.
am the coordinator for like Alice in Wonderland. We just did that play this last spring. Um, yeah, so I have a really huge role in the arts department in the school that I'm working for currently.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious to know. So, like, we've touched in on like context and like Las Vegas and like the programming that's kind of, growing up with that kind of programming, um, and hearing your awesome song. When would you say you felt like you found your voice? I guess maybe is my question. Like, is there a time like where you're like, okay, I feel rooted in my voice? Or curious about maybe like a time where you didn't feel like you were rooted in your voice. Like, what has the journey been like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. Yeah, I have a quote. If you can, make sounds with your voice, you have fingers to play, you have a body that dances, then you are a musician. You're
Mm-hmm.
an artist, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a voice to speak, you are an artist. And I think you know, all the time we're cycling through being more embodied in our truth and being more embodied in our authentic voice and feeling less embodied.
Mm-hmm.
And it just really depends on who's listening.
Mm. Oh yeah. Tell me about the Who.
So it's like you can, talk with somebody and have this deep conversation that we're having now, and they might not resonate with it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's totally okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as an artist, so right now I'm working on the Abundant Nourished creative course. And this is something I deeply explore in this course is identifying limiting beliefs and building a new self-concept for yourself. Prioritizing having a well-balanced nervous system. As projectors, it's really waiting for the invitation, right? That's like a huge theme, being a projector, and why it's important and pivotal for the voice specifically is projectors have to feel valued. We have to feel valued. And so I think we always have a voice from when we're little to growing old. I think
Mm-hmm.
we do a huge disservice for ourselves thinking like, oh, when did I lose my voice or when did I not have it? It's like
Sure.
always there. It's always been there. Like it's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
There's no Ursula and Little Mermaid who can take it away. Like it just doesn't exist.
Right.
And so it's like, who is listening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people can really hear you when you speak in your authentic voice. And those
Mm.
are like true soul family. Like you and
Right.
I have always been true soul family since we were really little.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
so I hope that helps answer that in
Yeah.
some way.
Yeah, I think it's, when you said speak in your true voice, I think sometimes people can't hear us sometimes because we're not speaking in our voice, we're speaking in somebody else's voice. imitating or being like, this is what I should sound like. So I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to dress this way. When you peel back the layers and you realize I'm just really not happy because I'm not being myself. Um, and so kind of just understanding that magnetism, I think, is what happens. And I think it's so cool. So for years and years and years, we've known each other, but I didn't know that we were both projectors. So like this human design, language,
Oh,
um,
it's so cool.
it is really cool. And it's a really unique thing. I think I'm meeting more and more projectors as I do this work with the podcast. So that's also kind of like really key. But what you said, it's like for projectors, and I think there's a lot of projectors that listen. So this is honestly very unique. But like feeling valued, I think this could apply to anybody. But there's a specific sensitivity that I think that happens with projectors. It's
Mm.
like, am I invited to share what I'm gonna share? Are people gonna listen? Um, you know, I think a lot of times for projectors, they can talk and talk and talk or share and share, and then it might fall into the wrong places or in the wrong ears, and they're like, oh, I don't feel like I have that recognition. I'm not being seen. I'm not being heard. You know, and you
Yes,
know,
yes.
yeah. And then you leave those interactions usually feeling sad, bitter, disappointed, like, or just like womp womp.
Yeah,
What
bitterness
was
is
that
a big
for?
thing for the projector, into falling into not self, right?
Yes.
And so projectors we have to be really careful with our thoughts,
Hmm.
which is why when I start the Abundant Nourished Creative course, I actually talk about abundance last, which is really
Mm,
interesting because it's when we talk about marketing, they say, give the people what they want
sure.
and then give them what they need when they purchase
Hmm.
your course or they dive into the content. A lot of people want the abundance. They want that, big,
Sure.
to be free in their expression, to be seen, to be recognized, to have all of this,
Hmm.
right? But they don't realize that idea that you're talking about, peeling back the layers, that it first starts with really addressing those limiting beliefs and your self concept. Your
Hmm.
self concept is value. How do you value yourself? How do you see yourself?
Hmm.
Because nobody can devalue you.
Hmm.
It's impossible. The universe loves all of us. The universe, God, like has this deep, deep love for all of us, and it's abundance. It's
Hmm.
constantly flowering and blooming and cycling and teaching us and wanting us to grow.
Right.
Um, but the
Yeah.
ego can devalue a person. And I think that's Clarissa Pinkola ST's in so many of her books,
Hmm. Yeah.
really kind of drives this home. She's such an amazing person, intuitive creator. Yeah, for women, I think especially it's important to remember our inherent value.
Hmm. Yeah. In Creative Fire, she says there's this concept of the creative blocks. Oh, I'm blocked. I'm blocked creatively. And then she goes into how the only real block is that you think that you're blocked, but it's always there and it's always accessible. But that the process of that access is a constant cleaning and it's a constant hygiene. And it's like, well, what are you putting in the way of like really getting to that gold vein for whatever that is for the person, whatever it is for the artist, that flow state that feels really good, or oh, that's where I feel like I'm creating my quote unquote best.
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of thing. And I thought that was so interesting with her. I remember very distinctly I was taking dishes out of the dishwasher when I was listening to this. So it's just so embedded in my brain. I'm like, oh yeah, the dishwasher moment, because she shook me with that.
Yes, yes.
Like we always have access. Like you said, we always have a voice. Um, I do think that we wax and wane in different moments of life of like, I feel more embodied. I feel less embodied. I feel like my true self. I feel like my not self, like these kinds of things. And
Mhm.
I think it's all good. It's all learning. like in moments where I have felt like my not self, right? This is human design language, but um, I'm like, okay, I know that that's not for me. Like I tried it
Mhm.
on, I put it on, it feels
Yeah,
off, or it feels icky, or it feels meh, like boring, or whatever it is. That's not me. Okay, so let me just repivot, and here I am.
absolutely.
That kind of
And I
thing.
think the hardest thing for souls who are awakening on a spiritual path, and especially young children and beings who
Mm-hmm.
really want approval. They want, because our approval is dependent on our survival. And so that's where it gets really tricky, right?
Sure.
Because our approval within a social group, that determines our survival within that social group.
Right.
Um,
Like we're
and so
wired this way biologically.
yeah, wired biologically that way.
Mm-hmm.
And when we lived in communities and we lived with medicine women and women who were medicine women, who were seers, who were mystics, were valued at one point, and you look at Egypt and how they valued
Mm-hmm.
women and revered the goddess.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many points in history where that was really valued. To have wisdom was
Right.
really valued. And those women caretaked the village and they kept the children safe, and
Mm-hmm.
they helped to instill all of these really beautiful woven threads within the community that kept the culture thriving and alive.
Mm-hmm.
We are so isolated
Mm-hmm.
as beings now in
Yeah.
our current dynamic, um, that having access to those groups is has now become a privilege, not something that was like an innate given. You
Right.
were just born here on this earth, and so you have access to this.
Right.
It's like almost like we've put a spiritual hierarchy on things that drives me absolutely, as
Sure.
soul, as a being. Like, I,
Mm-hmm.
as a teacher, it's hard to see because so many people have trouble getting over this piece of my limiting beliefs, and how do I build a new self-concept for myself, and how do I feel valued, and how
Mm-hmm.
do I feel seen, and how do I find my tribe?
Right.
Um, because we've instilled a hierarchy within even spiritual awakening groups.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. AKA the dark side of modern spirituality, perhaps. Um, the shadow, the underbelly. But yeah,
Yes.
it's interesting you mentioned the word hierarchy, and I'm just thinking how, we're living in the Western world, you and I, and those listening, and usually, and just thinking how so much of the world, it's in the societal programming, like the hierarchical nature of things, and success versus failure in life. I mean, where do you identify as a millennial? I was going to say we're millennials, but sometimes people are like, I'm not totally a millennial. But like age wise, we're like in that go to college, get a job kind of societal
Yeah.
narrative.
Yeah.
Um, and remember when I was doing music with you originally, we had a lot of big plans, and I was like, I think I'm going to quit my bachelor's in psych so I can just do music.
Same. I was right there with you.
Yeah. And then it was like, no, my parents were like, no, don't do that.
It would
And
have
I
been an ingenious move back then, because, and we were so ahead of our time.
yeah, pat on the back. All that courage, all that young courage to do
Yeah,
the
but
thing.
yeah, you're right, because we're coming into the age of awakening, the age of Aquarius. Like,
Hmm.
we're entering a whole decade that is ruled by, like, and maybe possibly an entire new timeline and a new world that we've
Sure.
never seen before, which is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Where artists are going to be so valued. It's going to be
Yeah.
so valuable to be an artist in a visual world
Mm.
where, we are really craving, one, we're craving truth. Truth is becoming more valuable. We're starting to see a
Hmm.
huge spike of, like, people who are way showers, like really
Right.
coming online, which is super cool.
Yeah, the
Um,
people who've been in hiding, as we were
yeah,
saying, the boots on the ground, the roots in the boots,
roots.
maybe not, because like there's people who are we're all doing the work around the globe, but I feel
Yes.
like, speaking to what you were mentioning, like before we got on just a little bit ago, but like the, I'm in my process, I'm in my work, but I'm not necessarily perhaps putting things out there. That doesn't make you the you, not specifically speaking to you, but like, the you doesn't make you any
Yes.
less of
Yes.
an artist or less of a person or whatever.
Yes.
And there's
Yeah.
a lot of people
100%.
that I'm talking to and that I can think of right now where I'm like, I know that you're creating in your house quietly, And then there's like that kind of like, okay, here's the magical fairy dust. This is the moment to bloom and bring it up and out. I'm not saying that that has to look like putting it on the internet, but like,
Yeah.
there's like the public private binary that happens with the
Yeah.
process. But anyway, I was on a
I have
tangent.
chills, chills with that. And sometimes people need that,
Yeah.
sometimes young budding artists or creatives or the 50-year-old woman creative who loves salsa dancing and has been
Hmm.
salsa dancing in her living room her whole life while her husband has been asleep, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
she needs it just as much as the young budding 20-year-old does.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really deep truth, that is often overlooked. That the value of the medicine woman or the medicine man is that they start with, when did you stop singing? When did you stop dancing? When did you stop creating? I
Yeah.
want to know, because that point when you stop doing those things, that was the point where you stifled that creative fire,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And that creative fire is actually essential to our life force.
Hmm.
And what people don't tell you as an artist is when you start coming online with your creative energy, your jing, your
Hmm.
life force, like when you really start bringing that online, it's like exponential.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, like you start getting so much new life and so much new inspiration, and your tiny little cactus becomes this gigantic swahito. The swahitos are these like really revered cactuses in Mexico
Hmm.
that people will shoot bullet holes into. They shoot bullet holes into these cactuses and they're still standing, right?
Wow. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's just like that with our creative life. All of a sudden, when that seed is ready, when it's primed and it's given the right conditions,
Right.
flowers in all of these really beautiful ways.
Hmm. Hmm. I know it's so juicy, and I think the thing that I hear with that is just keep creating and following the call and listening to where you are are pulled and like guided to go and what you need to do. And sometimes the work is not public and nobody knows about it, and sometimes it's very public um and in somewhere in between, and just like all of the ins and outs of all of that. And I do think the future is really going to value artists, because I really think people are starting to understand that art is not a privilege. Like,
Yes.
this has been a thing, right? This has been a concept, but like art
Yeah.
is just as natural as eating or breathing for
Yes.
humans. Like I think of like cave drawings and like dancing or singing or something, and just the cave drawing itself, right? Like,
Yes.
and
Yes.
just the human nature of creating, it's innate. And I do think that the archetype of the artist is what is going to heal the world, as not just that, but like, a huge part of it. And because of what you said,
Yeah.
it's the medicine, for us. And when we hold on to our gifts, when we hold on to those creations, it makes us sick. It's poison. It becomes poison, they say. And as I've experienced, there's been
I
times.
actually would be really careful with that spell because Um,
Hmm.
rip that one out.
Tell me about what you think with that.
I'm gonna uproot that from your psyche and from every star seed psyche, because when we hold on to our creations and when we have the wisdom to know when the right timing is for that creation to bloom,
Sure.
it could be that that person needed to hold on to their creations until they were 50.
Yeah.
I've seen amazing wise women come out with some just, there's this woman who she's on Instagram and she has this charter boat and she got famous in her late 50s and she's just like on her boat creating with her husband and they're living this like super magical fairy life, and that was the
Yeah.
right timing for
For
that
her.
specific seed, right?
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I teach this in the Abundant Nourished Artist course that the biggest thing as creatives is trusting our inner voice, trusting our inner wisdom and our inner knowing. If a creative is in an environment where they're not seen, they're not recognized, they have friends and family around them who are like me when I came online with a lot of my stuff in my early 20s, which was wildly avant-garde. I've written songs that I've never released.
Right.
And am recording one this summer that I wrote in my early 20s, and it's the right time for it.
Right.
And it's taken a decade.
Hmm.
And so I think it's that being that star seed, just having so much faith and trust in themselves and in their path is the medicine.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it's holding on to something is far from poison. It could be very wise for
Sure.
that person.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I'm also going to say the opposite to allow both things to exist. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
like I do think for some people, the impetus to hold isn't maybe so much rooted in perfect timing or their divine timing. It's more like, um, I'm gonna hold it because I am afraid to be seen, or I want to be seen, but I'm afraid to be seen. It's like I want to, but I can't, and then that becomes this pressure cooker for people, and can become
yeah,
very depressing. So it's like the whole spectrum of experience. I wildly agree with what you said, and the vision I had with what you were saying was remembering a few plants actually. Mandrake as a plant takes like at least 2 years to bloom. Like it'll just
mhm,
sit below the in the soil as a root, and you may not
yeah,
even see a flower for like 2 years. And then also thinking of cacti, like so many cacti can kind of just stay in waiting. And like I just went through this process with my own Peruviana, Sirius Peruviana cactus this summer. She was just like, I'm not blooming, I'm not blooming. And then she was just like, bah, And
yeah, yeah,
it take like her blooms happen usually every year, but I think she might have skipped a year. And it's just really interesting to look at the plants as models, for what we're talking about. And I think like underneath what we're sharing is really about like natural rhythm, like
yeah,
your natural rhythm,
yeah,
for the being that's listening, that's speaking, and
absolutely.
it's very much like an earth. I feel like it's a very earth-based conversation that we're having, as far as the creative process goes, and following the seasons and knowing when to rest, just that whole thing. But what I
Yes,
wanted to
yes.
ask about Abundant Nourished Artist Course is, what's the format like? Like, are you meeting online? Is it live? Is it a work at your own pace? Like, what is that like?
Yeah, so I do one-on-one coaching sessions.
Okay,
People can sign up with me to kind of dive in for an hour and talk about anything that's coming up for them.
cool.
And then the Abundant Nourished Artist is going to be a video recorded self-paced course
Okay,
that anyone can access, and they'll have lifetime access to it, so they can kind of circle back through it and be cyclical with it,
nice.
and go at their own pace and their own timing. So yeah, that's what really felt right.
Mm-hmm.
Just to have. something that was really pre-recorded and preset to offer,
Yeah.
that could just run itself, for as long as it wants to.
Yeah, I know it seems appropriate for the timing part of the conversation, like really like helping people be in their divine, timing, in the process and digesting the information. So
Thank you.
amazing. And so Wolf Woman is out. And then is there another song that's coming out? Did you say that here?
Yeah, so I'll be recording a song called Ember this summer,
Fun.
at Storyteller Studios, and also a song called The Winged Ones. Ruby
Ooh,
Begay, she's an amazing artist, who is also on Spotify and iTunes and all the places. One of my favorite songs by her is called Good Enough, and it
cool.
talks about how you're always good enough. Good
Um,
enough for love, she says in there. You're deserving of all your dreams. It's such a powerful song. And
mm,
we wrote a medicine song together called The Winged Ones. And so, two songs, Ember and The Winged Ones, those
mhm.
will be coming next.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Is there a timeline on that? When we can see it? I'm sure you'll let us know too, but
I'm thinking a little Samhain for Ember.
okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The Samhain timing for Ember will be releasing that. And then the Winged Ones has been in process for a while. So Ruby and I are gonna probably keep that earthen until I'm thinking maybe the spring.
Sure.
Feels like a very
Hmm.
nice timing to have a Samhain and maybe a spring song.
Amazing. Okay, cool. So,
Fits.
of course, I'm going to link all of the things so that you guys can get connected with Rae and check out all of her music and all of the things that she's doing and her courses and sessions. Any last things that you want to share before we conclude?
I'm just super grateful. I love our flow today and just really always been really intrigued by your dream work,
Oh,
courses, and the
thank
things
you.
that you've been manifesting. So thank you for all the work that you're doing as well.
Thank you so much. Dreams are foundational to my life. So, yeah, I'm really thankful for this space and that I got to chat with an old friend and just like how amazing it is to witness your process and see all of the amazing things that you're doing and getting to hear the song again today live is such a treat. Like, wow,
You.
it's amazing. They're going to get to listen to it later, but I got to get it in real time. So I always feel like I got a blessing. Um, yeah, it's just incredible and the wisdom that you're carrying and all of the experience and all of the children's lives that you're touching. It's just like, wow, you're doing so much and you're a mom. Like, God
Thank you.
bless. So everyone listening, go check her out. We're going to conclude here and peace, peace, peace. We'll see you later.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.